You the best in slay with some southern charm, alright. Yeah, with some southern charm, it's nice. Hey, yeah, it's the IDP show, now you know.
Welcome to the IDP show. In this special YouTube exclusive, we are doing the long-awaited top 8 Dynasty defensive tackles. Gentlemen, for years, it was essentially Aaron Donald and a few other guys that we could plug in. It was sort of like the tight end position for offense. But in doing this exercise, it was very interesting to me how deep and varied this field of defensive tackles to choose from was, and we are going to go through it tonight. Our top 8 Dynasty defensive tackles, gentlemen, but let's kick things off with the honorable mentions, and we're going to start off with DeForest Buckner, Cam Hayward, Ed Oliver, and Milton Williams. Addy, I will throw it over to you first. Milton Williams is probably a name that not a lot of folks have heard of here on this honorable mention list.
Yeah, right. This is someone that we expect to have a much larger opportunity in 2023. We know about Fletcher Cox moving on, Javon Hargraves moving on. Cox is moving on, right?
That's right. Pretty much that entire defensive line is moving on.
Yeah, so Milton Williams flashed quite a bit last year. He's one hell of an athlete. I think he's got like a 9.9 RAS score. But yeah, I mean, he's going to have... He'll have his best chance yet to show what he's made of, but yeah, I mean he's been amazing. This will be his 3rd year, but yeah, someone that he's going to be on the radar. Also, you could see someone like Devontae Wyatt. You know, he's someone that we'll probably be discussing at some point. But yeah, I mean, like you mentioned, like defensive tackle is really nice right now.
It's a great spot, Bobo, and there's some other stalwart names on here that people probably recognize. DeForest Buckner is the one that I think may raise some eyebrows having him outside of our top 8.
I mean, if you wanted to argue with us enough, we could probably see maybe putting Defo into the top 8. He's just had a lot of years where, at least for me, the reason he's out is the tackle numbers are pretty good, but the sacks just come in too few games. That's what really gets it for me. He is a really good best ball option, in my opinion, because in some of these games, he's putting 2 and 3 sack games together, and that's a week winner for you. I would just like to see him spread this out over an entire season a little bit better, so that average every single game point usage there is a little bit higher for Buckner. But he's still really good.
Yeah, it speaks to how good defensive tackles are. I mean, but he'll be 29 when the season starts. So, he's getting up there in age. But yeah, I think he has been. I think we've seen his best play, right? I mean, this was a guy that put up 12 sacks in his 3rd year. So I don't think we'll see that type of DeForest Buckner again.
And to his credit, he hasn't had a lot of help in Indianapolis. Payne's been a little hurt. Yannick
Grover
hasn't worked
Stewart's
out.
been good, at least last year.
Yeah. But like I was going to touch on with Milton Williams, for a couple years coming out of these drafts, we don't always know with these D tackles if they're going to be worthy of, IDP usage. You have another good defensive tackle who was Mr. Rassman last year, Jordan Davis, who looks like he's probably not going to be that elite of a, defensive tackle for IDP usage. Even Devontae Wyatt, we hope he gets to that point. But yes, Milton Williams, if you're looking for a guy to just go and grab, what's Milton Williams worth right now? Somebody probably take a 5th for him.
Yeah.
I would.
How many people
he
even know?
He's probably on the waivers.
Know who Milton Williams is?
That's a good point.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
So we should bring up here that we each did for this exercise our ranking 1 through, I believe it was, 11 guys here. So we ranked 1 through 11. The guys that you're going to see in the top 8, and then Buckner, Hayward, and Ed Oliver. Milton Williams was kind of thrown in as a bonus there. I will point out that we have the kind of chart here in our doc that kind of lays out where everyone voted. You all both had DeForest Buckner at 9. I had him at 5, and then you had Cam Hayward at 11, and I had him at 7. I just wanted to show some love for the big guy. He's getting up there in age, but 13.9 points per game over the last 3 seasons. That was, I believe, the second highest average. Yes, the second highest average behind Aaron Donald, who we'll talk about here in a little bit. So
yes, he's been awesome. I mean, he's really been discount Aaron Donald.
truly.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, he's 34, I think, right? So that's the only
33, going to be 34.
reason.
I
Yeah,
think.
so that's the only reason why he's not higher on this list. But yeah, man, that guy, I've been drafting the hell out of him in these best balls we've been doing. So I have no worries about him for 2023.
Yeah, but beyond that, I get that. What can this do? Is he going to stay at that elite level as you move into your mid-30s? We certainly have not maintained elite physical production in our mid-30s, so it's a reasonable concern.
We have our moments, though.
We do have our
We can
moments.
gear up.
Dynasty ranks.
So there you go. Honorable mention, Cam Hayward, DeForest Buckner, Ed Oliver, Milton Williams. Boys, let's jump into the top 8. And, Bobo, let's start with one of your favorite players. I know you brought this guy up multiple times on the show. Number 8, Christian Wilkins of the Miami Dolphins. What is it that you like so much about Mr. Wilkins?
I just like that. I feel like he is a great age right now, 27 years old. That defensive line has improved, in my opinion. Now you've got Jalen Phillips. You also have Bradley Chubb for 2023. I don't know who else is going to be there. I don't know if Melvin Ingram is still going to be there.
He's a free agent.
Christian Wilkins, does he have the safest floor of all these guys?
So that was what we were talking about. I was debating Daron Payne versus Christian Wilkins. So I had Daron Payne at number 9. So he just missed my top 8. I had Christian Wilkins at 8. So I was debating Payne versus Wilkins there. And the reason that I went with Wilkins over Payne was the tackle floor. Now, Christian Wilkins does not have the sack upside, but over the past 3 seasons, 78 tackles per year for Wilkins, but he is 2 years older than Daron Payne. So I think that's the reason maybe you see this guy a little lower. He is a little bit older, and the sack upside is not there, but you do get that safer tackle floor. Almost 80 tackles a season, pretty much.
Yep.
So I think that's a good bow to put on Christian Wilkins. Let's talk about number 7 here, a guy that really burst onto the scene. I saw this stat PFF was putting out, basically the player from each team that improved their PFF grade the most. And for the New York Giants, no surprise, it was number 7 on the list. Dexter Lawrence, Addy, broke out in a big way, and we are very excited about Mr. Lawrence's future there with Big Blue.
Yes, sir. 25.1 years of age, was a first-round pick, 17th overall, 9.86 RAS score. People probably don't realize that. This is a large dude, but he is a very good athlete. 12.8 points per game this last year. That was 26 among defensive linemen, 10th among defensive tackles. Dexter Lawrence is a baller, dude, and he's in a great situation there.
He's 6'4", 342.
Yeah, he's well fed. You look at him, and yeah, he's got a bit of a belly, but the boy can move, man.
A lot of these big guys can move, man. I mean, some of these 40 times they put up at, pushing 340, 350 is kind of incredible.
This is a great spot here to have Lawrence because Lawrence actually had sacks in 7 games last year, and he also has a really good tackle upside as well. Lots of games with 5, 7. He had a 9 tackle game last year. And then, this is always something that I go to. I talked about it with DeForest Buckner. I've already mentioned it with Christian Wilkins, but Dexter Lawrence, Azeez Ojulari on one side, Kayvon Thibodeau on the other. He's
And
gonna
Leonard
have
Williams.
some help. Absolutely, yeah.
That Giants defensive line is pretty nice.
Love that.
5.0540. That's pretty good for 340 pounds.
Absolutely. Yeah, we should mention, so Christian Wilkins, 10.9 points per game by Big 3 scoring over the last 3 years on average. That was, for me, I wanted to get a broader context since this is a dynasty kind of outlook for these guys. What has the performance been like over a larger sample size? And so we looked at the average points per game over the last 3 seasons. So 2020, 2021, and then 2022. Christian Wilkins, 10.9 points per game. Dexter Lawrence, 9.3. So I actually had Dexter outside of my top 8. He was number 10 on the list for me, just because of the lower points per game average. But Addy, it seems like what we're doing here with Dexter is projecting this guy to continue to ascend into 2023.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, there's a little bit of concern just because, like you mentioned, we haven't really seen it enough, But yeah, I feel like he's going to be recognized as one of the best defensive tackles by mainstream media here pretty soon.
Absolutely. Well, let's talk about number 6 on the list. It is the recently franchise tagged Washington Commander alongside his teammate, which we'll talk about here in a couple picks. It is Daron Payne, recently franchise tagged. Bobo, do you like that he is staying in Washington, at least for 2023?
Oh, absolutely. Daron Payne is really, really good. Still young, 25 years old, large individual as well. You got to keep him a little bit calm at times. You know, the sideline incidents. I guess it was this year.
Possibly has a bad heart.
Yeah,
but
yeah, we've all had those days though. But Daron Payne, I think, had sacks in 10 games, maybe 11 games last year, if I'm counting wrong. But no, I like the way Daron Payne plays football. The guy gets to the quarterback. He's got a really healthy points per game average here. In my opinion, at 25 years old, he's still ascending. We probably haven't seen the best of Daron Payne quite yet. Do you agree with the franchise tag?
I would have franchise tagged him as well. Okay. I'm glad Washington did that. Stability is important. I think they will try to work out a long-term deal, but Addy, they've got a lot of guys along that defensive line to pay. Jonathan Allen's already been paid. Montez Sweat and Chase Young are going to be looking for new deals here soon. So I kind of wonder if Payne is the guy that gets squeezed out. But there's no denying that this guy is mega talented and is an ascending talent at the defensive tackle position.
Yes, I definitely agree on all those points. Chase Young may be the guy that gets boxed out of that situation.
They already are debating if they want to pick up his fifth-year option, which is not great.
I mean, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. That dude has not done a thing yet. But, you're going to worry about Daron Payne with the 11.5 sacks kind of being out of nowhere. His previous high was 5, which was his rookie year in 2018. So do we think he's a 10-plus sack type of guy for the rest of his career? I don't. I think, it's probably likely this is someone that's going to be more in the 6 to 9, nice range.
That's a very nice range to be in. I have to wonder,
Not
too.
Not the 9-11.
Yeah, never forget. That is a different range. But I do wonder, the Philadelphia Eagles went from one of the worst pass rushes in the NFL last season to leading the NFL in sacks with some infusion of talent. What if this team gets Chase Young back and suddenly has a Philadelphia Eagles type of leap in terms of sack production, pressures, and this just transforms into a unit where you could have used so many Philadelphia Eagles in your IDP lineups, and the same was true for Washington. I wonder if that could even take an additional step forward in 2023. We'll see.
I just don't know that I believe in Chase Young anymore.
But people still do. He's
still very valuable in Dynasty. Yeah.
I would be going to try to get my dollar back on my dollar spent right now on Chase Young, honestly. If I got you probably gave a first for him. Maybe you got him in the second. If you did, kudos. But
no one's giving you a first, though, right?
I don't know. Go find your OSU fan.
Regardless, it's nice to have him back along the defensive line.
Yeah.
I think that's only going to help kind of these guys. We like the New York Giants kind of in a similar situation with talent across this defensive line. So,
but even in some of these best balls, even in some of these dynasty startups,
just not touching.
Young's still way too high for me.
He's still a top 4-round pick pretty much.
Yeah, that's too rich.
No thanks.
But we like Daron Payne. Number 5 defensive tackle for us. Let's go to number 4. And Bobo, we will tee you up on this one. It is Aaron Donald. Now, this was probably the biggest riser for us collectively. I think when we did this exercise back in December, originally, Aaron Donald was actually outside of our top 8. Now, all kind of the signs are all pointing to Aaron Donald being back in Los Angeles. We saw Bobby Wagner get released today. I think that was more of a cap-saving move, not necessarily like a, sell all the assets, fire sale type of situation. There was the weird kind of thing with the Twitter bio. This dude submitted retirement papers, so it was swirling, but there's a lot of money on the line, Bobo, and we like AD being back for 2023 and maybe 2024 as well.
I believe $34 million in 2024 for Mr. Aaron Donald. We just learned today that the team has moved on from Bobby Wagner, which shout out to Greg Rosenthal, but he actually tweeted that something that said, it really says more that the Rams' priority is not really 2023, but it's maybe a little bit more futuristic, which is kind of weird for the Rams. But Adam pulled up AD's contract with the Rams. I think you've got 2 more years of Aaron Donald. That's just tremendously too much money to be retiring for right now. What is Aaron right now? 31?
Be 32. Yeah, when the season starts.
Yeah. If I get 2 more years of Aaron Donald, you sign me up. He's still going to be a top 4 defensive tackle for you. Look at the points per game.
That's what I said. That was what swayed me. I I still don't have full confidence that we're going to see AD this season and beyond, even into next season. Once the retirement question starts to come into play with these guys, when it is such a mental game, that's a big red flag to me, because I think once you start thinking about it, are you all in? Typically, we see this about like 2 to 3 years before a player retires, if not sooner. So I have serious doubts, but what swayed me is even if you just get one more season of Aaron Donald, and I agree with you. If I were a betting man, I would bet 2 more seasons just based on the contract, but the points per game, even missing, I think it was 6 games in 2022, this guy still put up the highest points average, so 227.1 points per season on average over the last 3 seasons, and 15.5 points per game. Addy, that was enough to sway me to say whatever we get of Aaron Donald, that is worthwhile and valuable to me.
Yes, absolutely. I've been taking him. He's been a value in these best balls. He's going in like the 3rd, 2nd round. I think that's going to correct. We're going to see him kind of move towards the back of the 1st. Once everyone, feels better about him playing this year, which I think he's like we just laid out. That is way too much money. It is hard to make $35 million in a year. Trust me.
It takes a lot out of Addy to have to make $40 million a year, which is his salary that he demands for this show.
Yeah, but do a lot.
So, Bobo, you had Aaron Donald at 3. Addy, you had him at 8, and I had him at 6. So it was a player that we were a little bit split on.
If the age was one thing and we were starting to see some decline in play, I could see fading him some. And I'm probably going to catch some heat for having him ranked here at 3. But that's fine. I'm going to have Aaron Donald in my lineup, and he's going to continue just to bust some skulls for the next 2 years. And I'm fine with that. I'm fine with it. In Dynasty, you give me one of the best defensive tackles of all time, and I will, the day he retires, he's going to be sitting on my squad. And thank you, Aaron.
So if you're a contender, are you willing to pay a 2nd-round pick for him?
That's the discussion that we had.
I think so. If you feel confident that this guy is going to be around for 2 years, you have Travis Kelce at the defensive tackle position, which is worth it to me.
Because most smart people are going to say, well, Aaron Donald's a sell because of his age, because of this. Look, he was hurt last year. That's fine. I think that means you need to go and try to acquire.
Usually you want to buy it when the public perception, you want to go against the grain.
Yeah.
You want to zig when others are zagging. So
try to get him for a 3rd. Send out an offer for a 3rd. If you got a window, you're in a window, try and acquire this guy.
And
Absolutely.
we're like a year.
Cheat code.
We're a year or 2 removed from him having like how many sacks? Didn't he push 20 sacks a couple years ago? The only thing that happened last
20
year,
and a half.
Yeah, I mean,
wow,
not that much has changed. I
That
saw
was in 2018, but still, he's been double digits basically every year of his career, except this last year in his rookie year.
Go look him up with his shirt off.
he's a beast. Hopefully he stays away from the knife fighting. He needs to just cool it a little bit.
Toughen him up.
Let's move to number 4. This is a guy I think you could make a strong case for at number 1. It is the other Washington Commander, Jonathan Allen, clocking in at number 4. And this is where we start to see a little more uniformity, boys, in our consensus rankings. Addy, you had him at 4. Bobo, you had him at 6. I had him at 4 as well. 11.1 points per game over the last 3 seasons on average. Addy, I think we've seen consistently Jonathan Allen going ahead of Daron Payne, so I think the market values these 2 guys appropriately compared to each other. But the one thing I will say that I really like about Jonathan Allen, we should mention a lot of these defensive tackles, almost all of them, are up for new contracts. Jonathan Allen is a made man, he is a paid man, and he is a stalwart for your IDP lineups.
Yeah, and like you mentioned, too, just tons of talent surrounding him, but just consistent with Jonathan Allen. He's been in like 60 tackles every single year, except his first year. The sacks, they range from like 6 to 8. You can pretty much count on that every single year. So that's hard to pass up. And he seems to be getting better, So
yeah. What's the age there? Do you have the age on Allen?
He's 28.
28. So same age as Buckner. But so let me ask you that, because so these 2 guys, Buckner is paid about the same age. I think maybe a smidge older.
Buckner's going to be 29, yeah.
Yeah.
So he'll be Jonathan Allen will be 28.
So what was it about Jonathan Allen that had him higher in you all's rankings than someone like a Buckner?
Honestly, for me, it was look at the help that Jonathan Allen has. He's got Montez Sweat. He might have Chase Young, and now he has Daron Payne beside of him. In the past, he's had Matt Ioannidis. Like, he's had a lot of good help there. Buckner does have Grover Stewart. You're right. Hopefully, Kwity Paye does take a step for us this year. But Jonathan Allen is just more solid week in, week out points for me. Buckner will have games where he hits and goes off for 40 points. But then the next week, he's liable to put up 8. It's just a little bit too boom bust for me with Buckner. And I think, like Adam said earlier, we've probably seen the best from DeForest Buckner. I really thought coming from San Francisco to Indianapolis, he was going to take another step in his career. He just got paid, and he's been great. He's been really, really good. And if you want to put him in your top 8, I'm not going to argue it. But there's just a couple of these guys I'd rather have him over.
We're splitting hairs.
Yeah.
I mean, all these guys are so good.
Yeah.
I want all of these defensive tackles.
And there is something to be said for continuity with the defensive coordinator. Indianapolis is turning over its coaching staff now. It seems like Gus Bradley is going to remain as the defensive coordinator. I don't think that's been announced officially yet, but the Commanders are bringing back Jack Del Rio, it looks like. So that defensive coordinator position will stay the same there. We'll see if the coaching staff makes it to the season in Washington. That remains to be seen. But I don't disagree that he does have more help along the defensive line, and he is a little more consistent because I've rostered Buckner. I felt the sting of the 2-point weeks and the 4-point weeks. And there is something to be said for having a little more peace of mind when you plug these guys into your starting lineups.
Honestly, I think a lot of Buckner's sacks last year came off of the Jets. I think he had like 3 maybe that week. But yeah, I mean, whatever. It's fine.
It's splitting hairs.
I'm thankful for this conversation that we're having because literally, we're several years removed from just having Grady Jarrett, Aaron Donald, and Jarrell Casey as defensive tackles to kind of go around. So we're deep with DTs right now.
We are spoiled. The riches are flowing. And let's move to number 3 now, a player who made a big statement throughout the playoffs for the Kansas City Chiefs, Addy, was Chris Jones clocking in at number 3. Him and Aaron Donald were both risers for us. I think Aaron Donald, because it seemed like he was coming back for another year, the retirement kind of weirdness died down a little bit. For Chris Jones, it was just dominance throughout the playoffs. That's fresh on our minds. And I have to imagine that he will be a top target, especially in these D-tackle required leagues going into 2023.
Yes, he may be the most boomer bust player in IDP.
Truly.
But
which makes him a great best ball target.
Right.
But not necessarily a guy you want to roster in like normal start-sit
He can
leagues.
be frustrating. I mean, he's you're not getting him out of your lineup just because of the upside. 16 points per game this year. That was 6th among all defensive linemen. That was 1st among defensive tackles. But then, in 2021, it was 12 points per game. In 2020, it was 11.5 points per game. 2019, he had a big year. That was 14 points per game. So up and down years, very sack dependent. The tackle floor is not there for Chris Jones. I mean, this is really a guy that you have to get sacks off of. Fortunately for him, usually when he gets sacks, he does other stuff. He gets forced fumbles and fumble recoveries, and he's a monster, dude. I think he had his best graded year PFF wise this year. But yeah, awesome player. Nice to see everyone show him love when he was on the big stage this year.
Yeah, I will say with Chris Jones, he kind of fixed a little bit of the boom bust for me this year. In 2021, I agree. It was the peaks and the valleys for Chris Jones. He only had sacks in 5 games, and like Adam said, his tackles, the highest tackle game in 2021 that he had, I think he had a 5-tackle game, but the rest of them are a lot of 1s and a lot of 2s. But Chris Jones actually had at least a half of a sack in 11 games this season. So he didn't burn you as much this year, especially after the bye. The dude went crazy this year after the bye. What can we attribute that to? Is it just elite play? Is it the fact that he had some help with Carlos Dunlap, George Karlaftis? I even like some of the interior guys that they had. Mike Dana was good at times. I really like Chris Jones. I think you've probably got a couple more good years of, elite Chris Jones, while the Chiefs seem like they're going to be able to kind of keep the ship together for 2 or 3 more years until maybe financially they got to make a change. But
I think it could be a number of things. I think it could have been the Chiefs realized we could win the Super Bowl, boys.
Mm-hmm.
Like this was maybe being tagged as like kind of a reload, retool, reconfigure year. And yet this team just won the Super Bowl. And I think you see that with teams oftentimes. They'll do what it takes to get into the playoffs, but you want to be playing your best ball at the end of the season. And don't forget, Chris Jones is going into the last year of his contract. So I think Chris Jones wanted to make a big splash at the end of the year, help push this team to a Super Bowl, and basically stroll into the GM's office and say, pay me my money. Now, make no mistake, this man is going to be making $28.2 million against the cap next season. So he is paid. It will be interesting to see what Kansas City does, but Addy, I think he's forced their hand a little bit, and I think he'll be back there on a new deal this offseason.
Yeah, I can't imagine them getting rid. I mean, unless his play drops off, considerably this year, which you never know. I mean, if he has one of these like 7 to 8 sack years, it probably becomes a thought that they entertain.
I think they're going to sign him to an extension this offseason.
I think so too. I mean, he's one of the best interior defensive linemen in the league.
Yes,
and that's been proven throughout his entire career. Look at the PFF grades throughout his entire career. 92.0 PFF grade last year, 83.4 in 2021, 90.3 in 2020, 89.4 in 2019, 90.9 in 2018, 89.5 in 2017. His worst year, 72.6.
Wow,
as a rookie.
He's good.
Pretty decent.
He's a good player. Let's get into our top 2, gentlemen. Addy, I think on your initial list of ranks that you sent us, you said there's basically a tier break here, and these next 2 guys are in tier 1 for you. Let's start with number 2 overall. It is the Tennessee Titans' Jeffery Simmons clocking in at number 2, and he was number 2 across the board for us, 11.1 points per game on average across the last 3 seasons. We should mention Chris Jones, 13.3 points per game average. That was good for 3rd behind only Cam Hayward and Aaron Donald. So if you want to know why, even if this guy is boom bust, that he is 3rd on the list is because when he booms, it can win you a week. And Jeffery Simmons, though, here at number 2, I think, Addy, there is maybe a case to be made that we are leaning a little bit more on age here for these guys than with other players, because you look at the dudes beneath these top 2 guys that we're going to get into. Now, number 1 does have a better points per game average, but there are other players I think you could make a strong case for. What was it that you felt good about putting Simmons in at number 2?
Just the upside, right? We've seen these guys, the ceilings, like we'll get to number 1 as well, but the ceiling that Jeffery Simmons has, he's one of those guys that can score 40 in a week. And there's not a lot of people that do that at that position. We love Jonathan Allen, we love Dexter Lawrence, but those guys are more like your 25 to 30 at best. Jeffery Simmons can pop off for 3-4 sacks in a game.
Yeah.
And I feel like we have not seen really his peak yet, right? He's but yeah, just an absolute monster, like the rest of this list is. But really, I think that we're going to see this guy take another step this year.
Yeah, Bobo. Jeffery Simmons, you had him at 2 as well. Any debate or waffling, or was this a pretty clear-cut number 2 for you?
No, I mean, he's pretty clearly number 2. I think the unanimous number 1 is pretty unanimous for everybody, honestly. But, yeah, Jeffery Simmons, and with our number 1 guy here, just all the stars are aligning, potential, upside, like Adam's talking about, just the game-wrecking ability, the age works out, their size works out. It's just that they are at their peak dynasty value right now. And, Simmons is right there. And honestly, Simmons played pretty well last year with 0 help in Tennessee. Everybody was hurt. Bud Dupree, Harold Landry, they were playing a lot with Rashad Weaver. The guy had a pretty good season with not a lot of help around him. So even more upside, I feel like, for Jeffery Simmons in 2023.
Will this be a contract year for him too?
Yeah. I'm telling you, all these guys are up for new deals. Quinnen, Simmons, across the board. Really, Chris Jones is up for a new deal. Daron Payne's up for a new deal. He got franchise tagged, but
Simmons will probably be tagged, right?
Wasn't Jeffery Simmons a little disgruntled last offseason about that there hadn't been a whole lot of extension talks?
Most of these guys probably get a little disgruntled about it. Are we in the territory now where you boys feel good in like a sleeper league having Simmons or our next guy as your DL1?
Yeah,
I think so too.
And these guys are always going to be, for whatever, I don't know what it is, but it's because they're defensive tackles.
Yes.
It's like the perception on them just is like they're less than. But like when it comes to these guys, Jeffery Simmons and Quinnen Williams, as spoiler alert, those guys have the same ceilings as the top dogs do.
And probably a little higher floor just because of some of the tackles. A little safer play.
Yeah. And that's what it's like in those leagues. We've kind of come to the same realization with cornerbacks versus safeties.
Yeah.
We shouldn't view these top options in IDP for cornerbacks as less than their safety mates. These guys are absolutely equivalent and deserve to be taken highly. But let's talk about number one on the list. Bless you. Thank you, Quinnen Williams of the New York Jets. Bobby, we wanted so badly for Quinnen Williams to make that leap and become the defensive tackle that we knew he could be. I think he was the 4th overall pick in the NFL draft. And so we had really high hopes for this guy, and he absolutely lived up to the billing in 2022.
Quinnen Williams won me a lot of leagues last year. I'll be honest with you. Quinnen had sacks in 11 games last year, and he actually only played in 16, I believe. He sat out week 15 against Detroit, but Quinnen Williams he put himself into the elite category of defensive tackles last year. We all kind of thought at the end of 2021 that Quinnen could really take a step, and boy, did he take a step in 2022. And I can't disagree more. Quinnen Williams, I'm not sure at what point he became the DT1 in Dynasty over the last year and a half, but Quinnen is by far the best defensive tackle for IDP right now.
Yeah, for IDP Dynasty especially. Yeah, 3rd overall pick in the NFL draft. Eddie, I think what maybe gave us a little bit of trepidation going into 2022 was that 2020 we saw the points per game, 13.5. Little bit of a dip down to 10 points per game, but then jumped back up to 15.9 points per game in 2022. He ranked 3rd best among interior defensive linemen and 9th among all DL. So when we have that conversation of should you feel comfortable with a guy like Quinnen Williams as your DL1, the answer is yes.
Yes. 55 tackles last year. That's a great tackle floor. 12 sacks. That's amazing. 12 tackles for loss. 2 forced fumbles, 4 pass defended in 16 games. 12.4% pressure rate, 15.7 pass rush win rate. All those are elite. 84.1 pass rush grade. That ranks 6th best among all interior defensive linemen. Quinnen Williams was amazing last year. Are we going to see 12 sacks every year? Probably not. But I think we're going to see. I feel like that tackle floor can go even higher. I feel like we're going to see a season where he has 70 to 80 tackles and 10 sacks. So
yeah, he doesn't feel like a 6 to 8 sack guy. He feels like a 10 sack guy per year. Maybe a couple more. Maybe 10 feels like the floor to me, honestly.
I think it's always dangerous to assume like 11, 12, 13 sacks. But I think with guys like Quinnen, I think 8, I see 8 to 10 as like the floor. Like I think I would be surprised if he finished lower than that, assuming health and, 16, 17 games from this guy. So
Quinnen in college, I like looking at these. And also, guys, we got the rookie season is in full swing. You want to look at the college production of these guys. As a sophomore at Alabama, Quinnen Williams had 71 tackles, 19.5 tackles for loss, and 8 sacks as a sophomore.
Wow.
Yeah, like a 19-year-old kid.
Yep. But
So,
a freak of nature. That's why this guy goes at number 3 overall in the NFL draft. And this is a particular position where draft capital is so important because these guys are going to be set up to be highly paid. They're going to get opportunity right off the bat. Bobo, we know draft capital is important for IDP, playing time, opportunity. How long of a leash do you have to produce? But guys like this go in the top 5 because they are freak athletes. And what do we know about defensive linemen? They take a little bit of time to mature, to develop. Why? Because they are going against professional offensive linemen on every single rep. The same cannot be said for linebackers, corners, safeties. Those defensive linemen have to win that rep to affect the play. So it just takes some time for these guys to develop. And that's what gets me excited about Quinnen Williams is that you are seeing just the beginning of this guy's ascension to superstardom in the NFL.
Absolutely. I think in my article, I talked about how many defensive tackles have been taken in our home league over the last 5 years, and I think there was only 2 of them. One of them, I took Jeffery Simmons at the 5-12, the last pick of the draft. There was a lot of weirdness going on with Jeffery Simmons at the time, but he was still a first-round pick for the Tennessee Titans.
Called it.
And I think the other guy was Quinnen Williams. I can't remember what round he was taken in, but I don't really advise taking a lot of defensive tackles in your IDP drafts just because we don't know which ones are going to be good for IDP for a little while. Just like Josh is saying, sometimes they take a little while to kind of figure out. And we even said in our chat yesterday or today while we were talking about these that all of them, you know, it's kind of hard to play that whole buy, sell, hold for these guys, especially if you're in a defensive tackle league where you have a defensive tackle spot. Now, if you're on Sleeper and you have these guys listed as just defensive linemen, sure, I could see how some of these guys would be good sales. But honestly, like even if you're looking at a broader range of outside of the guys that we've talked about tonight, there's not a lot of other defensive tackles that I really care to roster outside of Ed Oliver, Milton Williams. You know, you get much past that. You're in a 12-team league that has defensive tackles. It gets gross past that. But which of these guys, I mean, I know we've ranked them basically 1 through 10. There any of these guys that you really just want to hold on to? Any of these guys that you're looking to sell?
I mean, all these guys, I feel like, well, for the most part, are good sells because they are players whose value is starting to ascend.
Unless you're in a D tackle league, right? If you're in a D tackle league and you've got Quinnen, leave me alone.
Yeah.
I'm fine.
We're going to enjoy the next decade.
Yeah. Unless you're getting something.
It's a onesie position.
Yeah.
So when you find your one,
yeah.
I don't know. I have a hard time.
What's someone going to give you? If someone going to come give me a first, I doubt it.
If they gave me a first for any of these guys, cash out.
Goodbye.
When's the last?
But what are the chances of hitting on someone in the second round who's going to make as big of an impact for your roster as a guy like Simmons, a guy like Quinnen? Pretty small.
When's the last time you saw a trade involving a defensive tackle? They're pretty rare.
Yeah,
pretty rare.
Doesn't happen that much.
Most time everybody's looking for edges, but
would you give a second for Quinnen Williams?
Yes.
Oh, absolutely.
Absolutely.
Would you give a first? Would you give a 2025 first?
Defensive tackle premium, like defensive tackle league?
Defensive tackle required league, like our RSO league?
I think, but I mean,
I don't care. Yeah, sure.
Okay.
I'll give you a 25 first for Quinnen.
Yeah, 25
Absolutely.
first.
for,
Yeah.
for DT required.
Sure. Oh, I feel like you'd have to give more than a first for Quinnen.
Would you do it in Sleeper, though, where he's a DL?
DL, probably not.
Yeah.
Because there's a deeper pool.
Yeah, it's a deeper pool of
I
players.
don't care.
And it depends, I guess, if you're starting like 4 defensive linemen.
Yeah.
I would.
If you're only starting 2 defensive linemen, who cares?
But the onesie position thing, in leagues where these guys are the only D tackle, if you find a guy that you can just plug in, just hold on to that player, man.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, these dudes are worth their weight in gold, and they are, like we said, hefty fellas.
Yeah, I mean, one of the, this is one of the most fun players in the league, Quinnen Williams. Same with, most of these guys on this list.
What's Simmons?
You want to have those
That's
guys.
right. They make fantasy football and IDP more fun, Bobo.
What's Simmons' value right now in Sleeper?
I think at least a second.
A second. Yeah.
A second. Now, here's the thing. You're not going to give up like an early second in this draft, though, because that could be Will Anderson.
Yep.
Right?
Okay, let's do one more just because I feel like this one's interesting. So Chris Jones, we all have him at 3. In Sleeper, what's his value?
If I'm a contender, I'd maybe give like a late second for him.
Yeah, I thought third. But
Yeah, probably not going my way to do that.
Yeah. It's I love Chris Jones in best ball.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know that I want the headache of
In Dynasty.
of trying to roster this guy because like you said, you can't take him out.
Oh, yeah,
You're gonna get burned if you take this guy out of your lineup.
But it looks like it's Chris Jones and your boy for the defensive line in Kansas City, Josh.
George Karlaftis.
Thank you. Yes.
You're welcome.
I mean, 2023 season, it's going to be
true.
those 2 guys.
That's right. Unless they add somebody.
No, they won't.
Well,
They don't
thank
have
you
money.
all for watching this YouTube exclusive. We appreciate y'all tuning in. I know we've been teasing it forever. Oh, the top 8 defensive tackles, they're never going to do it. Well, here we are. February, what is today, boys? 23rd. We're doing the defensive tackle video at long last. We hope you all enjoyed it. Stay tuned to the YouTube, youtube.com/@theIDP show. We're going to have these top 8 Dynasty videos coming all off season for y'all. You're only going to get it right here on YouTube. Any final thoughts on defensive tackles, gentlemen, before we sign off?
No, we're taking this YouTube over.
Bobo, any final thoughts from you?
I agree with Adam.
All right. Well, thank you all for watching. Be sure to subscribe, and we will see you all in the next video.
You the best in sight with some Southern charm, alright.